Help support AMTV by becoming a patron, an AMTV staff member, and following us over on Twitter. Hi there guys, it's Adam Martyn here, and welcome back to another video, and this time I'm going to be talking about Channel 5. Now, I often get comments about, why don't you talk about Channel 5 more? You always talk about the BBC or ITV or even Channel 4, but you never delve into Channel 5, and there's a few reasons for that. I never really grew up with Channel 5. Channel 5, of course, launched in 1997. It's actually celebrated its 25th anniversary this year. However, at that time, I didn't have access to Channel 5. A lot of people didn't in the early 2000s with the various hookups and the ways in which you'd receive it. So I didn't grow up as a kid on Milkshake or any of those programming blocks, and as I got older and I could access Channel 5, I never really necessarily found a need to, though I do register its existence. So like what we've done so far, we've done it with the BBC, ITV, Channel 4, I wanted to have a look through Channel 5's schedule for Christmas Eve, Christmas Day and Boxing Day, and as I was looking through this, in my head, I thought either Channel 5 have been exceptionally lazy, or they've actually been a little bit genius with this. And before we start, as I mentioned, we have done videos looking at the Christmas schedules for the various different terrestrial channels, so if you like this sort of stuff, go and check those out, leave a like, and also subscribe to the channel for more. So let's start on Christmas Eve. So at 5:30 in the morning, we're kicking off with Fireman Sam, for any kids who are really up that early, and for anyone who says kids won't be up to watch telly that early, I was one of those children on occasion, so don't at me on that one. So Fireman Sam's on until 6 AM, 2 episodes there. Then we've got 2 episodes of Ben and Holly's Little Kingdom. These all say that they're repeats, by the way. These aren't necessarily brand new episodes. But I think these shows have so many episodes anyway that it doesn't really matter. And then at 6:25 AM, we have a double dose of Peppa Pig, that old children's favourite that is still chugging along, followed at 6:45 by a double bill of Thomas and Friends. This is obviously the CGI version. This is not the classic version I grew up on, but this new version's not for me. It's for today's generation. At 7:05, we have Daisy and Ollie, followed at 7:25 by Milkshake Bop Box Boogie. Nice to see that the Milkshake branding still survives after all these years. Then at 7:20, we've got another double dose of Peppa Pig. And then at 8 AM, we have Pip and Posy. Apologies if I'm just rushing through these. Again, these aren't shows I'm necessarily familiar with. I'm sure if you're watching and you have young ones, you'll have a better familiarity than I do. At 8:10, we've got Fireman Sam, again another episode of that, and then at 8:15 we've got Paw Patrol, which I believe is still very popular with its target demographic there. At 8:35 we have The Adventures of Paddington, followed at 9 o'clock by Pop Party City. At 9:20 we've got a repeat of an episode of Mimi's World, and then at 9:30 The World According to Grandpa. 9:40 AM goes to Cooking with the Gills, or Jills, is it? A lot of short shows in this children's block. A lot of stuff just lasting 10 minutes. I guess they say that caters to the current generation, but a lot of the shows I used to watch back in the day were 10 minutes long. At 9:50 AM, we've got Circle Square, followed at 10 AM with a double bill of SpongeBob SquarePants. Yes, that friendly sponge who has been going for over 20 years now, mind you. There's a double bill of him there. And then that ends the children's block. So the children's block ends at 10:30. So from 5:30 until 10:30, that's 5 hours of kids content on Christmas Eve. That's not too shabby if you ask me. I'll talk more about the jumbling of programs after we get to the end of Christmas Eve. So at 10:30, we have the NFL End Zone, which I guess is for those who are interested in the NFL. I'm clearly not one of them. Then at 11 AM, we have an episode of Friends, that sitcom that just continues to... Now, I've got to be honest, guys, I never really watched Friends much growing up. I've seen episodes since, and I do appreciate its impact on TV and all that, but it was never really my thing. At 11:30, we get into the films, so we have Scrooge, the 1951 film, and it does point out that it's in black and white. I mean, Scrooge is a classic film, the 1951 version. I mean, there's several versions of the Christmas Carol story that have been put to film that, you might like. Some people like the more modern 2009 one with Jim Carrey. I personally like the Disney one with Scrooge McDuck. But a lot of people like that 1951 adaptation. It is a classic, so maybe check that out. And then at 1:25 in the afternoon, we've got Planes, Trains and Automobiles from 1987, another film that many now regard as a classic film. And then at 3:15, oddly enough, on Christmas Eve, mind you, we've got a screening of Pearl Harbor, the 2001 film. I know war movies tend to, some war movies do come out at Christmas, but you'd like to think Pearl Harbor, from what I remember, I did see this film a very long time ago. It's a very bleak film, obviously, and I don't know, I sort of question who wants to watch this on Christmas Eve. Maybe some do, but I thought the war ones, that people wanted were a bit more upbeat than that. So after the mammoth film that's Pearl Harbor, at 6:35 we've got Harrods at Christmas, for anyone who's into that sort of thing. Then at 7:35 we've got the world's most expensive Christmas cruise. Channel 5 does a lot of this, don't they? Like the most this, the most that. So if that's your thing, then you're well catered for on Christmas Eve. At 8:35, we do have a comedy classic. We've got The Vicar of Dibley, which, you know, a lot of people do love that. Beloved characters, beloved cast members. So if you want a bit of throwback there and you don't already own the box set, that's on at 8:35. At 10:05 in the evening, we've got Britain's favourite TV comedy, another one of these like countdown shows that Channel 5 has gone all in the past few years. And then at 11:55, we have the world's funniest TV ads with Jason Manford, which I'd actually be tempted to check out. I do like looking at those old TV ads, so I'm all for that, personally. And that is the lineup on Christmas Eve. Now, I just want to jump back to the children's block, you know, from 5:30 till 10:30. I think it's great that so much of the morning is catered to that. It does seem a bit odd, the jumbling of programs. Like, you know, you've got Fireman Sam kicks things off, but then he's on later again, and then Peppa Pig, is all jumbled up as well. It just seems a bit odd. I know, like, young children, and I was the same back in the day, young kids aren't necessarily bothered what order these programs come in, as long as they're programs they know, that they like, that they find interesting. It just seems a bit jumbly on a schedule point of view. As for the films, the three they've selected, Scrooge obviously makes sense, you know, that's a very Christmassy film. I know Planes, Trains and Automobiles is being seen as more of a yearly thing, year on year, as it goes on, it's grown in affection. Pearl Harbor just baffles me. Again, I know there are war movies that get played every year, like The Great Escape is the first one that comes to mind, which is, of course, having a screening this year. But Pearl Harbor is not what I think of when I think of a Christmas, like, war movie that I'd want to watch. So that seems like a very odd choice. But let's move on now to the big day itself, Christmas Day. So, at 6 in the morning, we're kicking off with kids' programs again. So we've got Ben and Holly's Little Kingdom, a double bill of that. At 6:20, we have a quadruple bill of Peppa Pig, so that takes us to 6:55. Then we have an episode of Fireman Sam. At 7:05, we've got an episode of Thomas and Friends, followed by another Peppa Pig. See what I mean there? Like, so you have 4 episodes of Peppa Pig, 2 other programs, and then another Peppa Pig. It just, although this one is 15 minutes long, so maybe it's more of like a special one, more themed to Christmas. Then at 7:35, you have a double bill of Pip and Posy. At 7:45, you have Pop Paper City. 7:55, Cooking with the Gills, or Jills, however it is pronounced, as I say, not a program that I watch. At 8:05, The Adventures of Paddington. So a lot of familiar ones, although at 8:35, you have Britain's favourite 90s toys, which is still, you could argue that ends the kids' block after Paddington, but I mean, it's still about toys, and 90s toys, God, that'll take me back. I bet it'll be like Tamagotchis and things like that. That's what I remember, certainly. And then at 9:20, you have the greatest family Christmas hits. That's on for 55 minutes. So I guess is that just going to be a program of playing music videos and songs relating to Christmas? Who knows? At 10:15, there's Britain's favourite Christmas songs, and that goes on for quite a while, actually, nearly 3 hours. I remember, actually, it's a repeat, so it's probably the same program, but I remember last year, actually, people will laugh, but I mean, me and my family, we had this on in the background, so, you know, and I'll talk more about this in just a second. So then 1:10 in the afternoon, there's Britain's favourite 80s songs, which, you know, I'm a big fan of the 80s music. And not Christmas songs, this one, this is just 80s songs, but that'd be a fun countdown in itself. At 3:10, you have the Canterville Ghosts, so taking things a bit more of a spooky direction. And then at 5:10, you have Jay McDonald's Highland Christmas. And at 6:25, you have Britain's favourite 90s songs. Okay, so we're continuing. This one says it's a repeat, whereas the 80s one isn't. So maybe they did 90s last year. But, you know, if you like your 90s bangers, that is on for 3 hours from 6:25 till 9:25. So, you know, if you're doing like a Christmas party thing, you're playing some games, you want some background tunes, that program's there for you. And then at 9:25, we have the greatest Christmas Day telly ever. Apparently this is a new program. It's on for nearly 2 hours. I guess it's going to be either a countdown thing again, or it's going to be like a look back at the best sort of, I don't know, Christmas specials, maybe looking at the heydays in the 70s and 80s and stuff like that. So I'd be curious to check that out. I'm not going to lie. And then at 11:20, taking us through into the early hours of the next day, we have Britain's favourite party hits, which again is a repeat. So a lot of countdown stuff. So that's the Christmas Day schedule. Now, at first glance, you know, there's no real signs of any films there. So the main thing you might notice there is the lack of any Christmas films, which for, you know, the longest time on British television has been seen as like a staple. And again, back in the old days, that made more sense. You got to think, when films went out of the cinema at a time, like say even before VHS or home media, but even when VHS came around, home media, VHS and all that was very expensive back then. So a lot of the films that got repeated on Christmas, that was people's first chance to see them again out of the cinema. That's why I believe like the James Bond films did well on Christmas Day. A lot of the big action blockbusters always would do well. In today's age, that has way less of an impact. You know, a lot of these films now people can buy on DVD for as little as £10 brand new, or even less. A lot of them are available on streaming services that people have subscribed to. Netflix, Disney+, Amazon Prime. So screening films on TV at Christmas, I'd argue, it's nice to still have it as a tradition, but it's far less impactful than it used to be back in the 70s and 80s, and even the 90s to some extent. So what I like about Channel 5 is, if you look at their Christmas Day schedule, they haven't put any films on at all, which some would immediately be like, that's sacrilege. How can you have, you know, a Christmas Day lineup without any films? That's disgraceful, blah, blah, blah. I disagree. I think, you know, all the other broadcasters have gone for films on Christmas Day, and there will be some people who watch, you know, I get it still has a place, maybe for those, like, I know the BBC are screening a lot of Disney movies, maybe for those families who can't afford Disney Plus or don't have those stories on DVD or any sort of home media, then it's there for them. But I think Channel 5, it seems they've sensed that, hey, listen, all our main competitors, the big terrestrial boys, they're putting on films. We have like a less audience viewership in general anyway. Let's just do our own thing. Let's do what we want. So outside of the children's block, and again, I'm glad they've catered those early hours when, let's face it, a lot of young children will be up on Christmas Day really early, so it makes sense to have that programming there for them. However, I do like that from once you get onto like Britain's favourite 90s toys and stuff, from there a lot of the programming is more like countdown based. And some would say, Adam, what are you talking about? Why would you want countdown-based content on Christmas Day? Like, you know, counting down to the best ever. Well, you see, like in our house now on Christmas Day, when we were younger, when I was a kid, you know, yeah, we did watch more telly on Christmas Day. That was the thing. But again, times change. People get older and people don't do that anymore, or a lot of people don't. So what we do is, like, you know, we'll play a game or something, or we'll just do something else other than just sit and watch the telly. But we'll have it on. We'll have it in the background. So having things like Britain's favourite Christmas songs in the background, that's a great idea. That's just something you can whack on and just sort of mindlessly have on in the background, tune in every now and then. And they've kept that going, like with Britain's favourite 90s toys, favourite 80s songs, favourite 90s songs, party hits. It may all sound very trite and very, like, cheap content-wise, but I honestly think it's a stroke of genius, personally. Some would argue it's lazy. You know, a lot of them are repeats as well. But to be fair, guys, I think it's in the modern day and age, and for me personally, I think it's a great idea. And they've also got a bit of original content in there as well. At 3:10 is the first episode of The Canterville Ghost, which is a story originally by Oscar Wilde. This is a brand new retelling. I believe Anthony Head is starring in it as well. So it's nice that they've also dedicated some time to, like, conventional drama. Like, they might not have any movies, but they're still saying, hey, at Channel 5, we're still putting out some original drama, some original content. So that is there at 3:10 for you as well. But I think the countdown stuff's a really solid idea. Let's move on to Boxing Day and zip through that. So, like before, from 6 in the morning up until just after 9 o'clock, it's all kids stuff. So things like Peppa Pig, Fireman Sam's there, Thomas and Friends has their special, All Engines Go, Paw Patrol's in there. There's some new programs that, you know, we haven't seen on the past 2 days, like Blue's Clues and You, Oggy Oggy, The Secret Life of Puppies, Rawsome Dinosaurs, and that pretty much takes us to 9:25, where you get the entertainment news on 5, and then back on Boxing Day, we're back to some films. So, what have we got? 9:35, they're showing Breakfast at Tiffany's from 1961. Again, a lot of people see this as a classic, like, very timeless movie, a lot of people have affection for. I believe Audrey Hepburn, isn't it, stars in that? And it seems like they're going for an Audrey Hepburn double bill, because at 10 to 12 in the morning, My Fair Lady starts from 1964, the classic musical, which again Audrey Hepburn starred in. It won Best Picture, actually, so it's a really solid film there. So yeah, if you're a fan of those sort of things, then, you know, they're catering for you now on Boxing Day. Then you have the second episode of The Canterville Ghost. As I say, it was a 2-part series, so if you enjoyed it on Christmas Day, the conclusion's on Boxing Day. And then at 5 p.m, another film, Calendar Girls from 2003. So something a bit more modern, although I say that, nearly 20 years old. But Calendar Girls, I think, is one of those films people either love it or they hate it. It's a very straightforward film. I actually think it's quite good. I've seen the musical version. That was quite entertaining. So I'd definitely give it a chance. At 7 p.m, then, you have The World's Strongest Man 2022, for those who'd be interested in something like that. And then at 8 p.m, you have Les Dawson, The 30 Funniest Moments, of course, checking back with the famous comedian and personality there. A lot of the older generation, I'm sure, will enjoy that. Then at 10 p.m, you have another, like, countdown thing, Britain's favourite rock songs, because that's what I think about Boxing Day. When I'm lazing out, eating a lot, drinking a lot, I just want to rock out. Maybe a bit misguided genre-wise, but I'm sure someone will enjoy it. And that does actually take us through that does take us through to midnight. But although at midnight they are screening the Rolling Stones' Return to Hyde Park, Sweet Summer Sun. So again, any Stones fans can check that out there. So you'll notice that the Boxing Day schedule follows a bit more like Christmas Eve. You know, the kids block in the morning, and then a screening of 3 films, that being Breakfast at Tiffany's, My Fair Lady, and Calendar Girls. Relatively easy stuff to consume. Again, that's what you want on Boxing Day when you're like lazing around, not doing too much, just relaxing. You want those more straightforward films. So that's their lineup for the 3 big days. And again, I think not having any films on Christmas Day and just saving them for Christmas Eve and Boxing Day is actually a stroke of genius. As I mentioned, all the other terrestrial channels are doing it. You're going to get your fix there if you want to watch the films. But I think having this more like countdown-based content, especially on Christmas Day, is the perfect thing to have on in the background. You know, people say that for radio or podcasts these days. They're like, oh, I do listen. I have it on in the background whilst I'm doing something else. I notice more people are doing that with TV as well, at least more people I talk to. So to have that on Christmas Day, you know, you could be opening your presents or having your Christmas dinner or just like playing a game, doing anything. But in the background, you know, you've got Channel 5 on, you've got all these countdown shows and stuff like that. So do you know what? Fair play to them for going against the grain on that. Again, you could argue it's a bit lazy. Some would argue, you know, not putting on any films at all or a lack of original content, even though they've got the Canterville Ghost. But I actually think on Channel 5 Smart, given their stature, where they're at, and with their immediate competition on the other terrestrial side, it's actually a little bit of genius. But that is the Channel 5 Christmas schedule. Let me know, what do you think? Do you think this is better than what the BBC, ITV and Channel 4 are putting out? Do you think it's on par? Do you think it's worse? Let me know in those comments down below. Also, if you enjoy the video, please do leave a like on it. It really helps us out. And do subscribe to the channel if you're brand new. We would love to have you aboard. I've been Adam Martyn from AMTV. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Thank you to our patrons for helping to support the show. And a special thank you to Macra, Hux Media, Ben Freeman, Ethan Carberry-Holt, Bruce Danton, The Broken Kitsumanoid, To Boast Krotz, Globe of Reviews, Trev Hughes, Derek Chambers, Sean Knock, Bailey Green, and DSTV New Zealand, our AMTV staff members.